strategy and policy meeting this morning. Please bear with me while I attempt a new karakia to start the morning. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai. Thank you, everyone. And for those of us come forth from above, below, within, and from the environment, vitality and well-being for all, strengthened in unity. Nice way to bring us together to have our discussions this morning. Right, we have apologies from Councillor McDonald and Councillor Cook at this point. So somebody like to move those? Councillor McPhail and Councillor Lloyd. Seconded. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Any changes or additions? No, thank you. Number 4 is public forum. We haven't got any today. Item 5 is confirmation of minutes from the 2nd of August. Had time to have a look at those. Any questions or changes? Thank you, Councillor McPhail. Seconded, Councillor Morrison. All those please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Notification of extraordinary items. There are none. But if we are short of time, because we have quite a busy day, we will omit item 7 if we need to, but I don't want to if we can help it. So we'll keep on moving on. And item 7 is questions. We have a question that Councillor Morrison circulated earlier in the week. Councillor, would you like to share that question with us, and then we can get staff to respond? Thanks. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rodley, good grief. Oh yeah, full of M's. Sorry. Yeah, you are.
Yes, this question relates. I did send everybody, so that several important points in relation to the learn. If you had read the report on 2017, I think it was, but earlier reports too indicate the importance of reading it. If you're not familiar with it, it's a bit like ryegrass for dairy cattle. You need it. It's really important stuff. And for the lagoon, it makes it healthy because it takes out the nutrients, it maintains it stabilizes the bed, it provides food for habitat for fish, all sorts of things. So it's really good stuff. So the information sent out suggested to me that, and I'll just read it again, riparian density exceeds and is having an adverse effect on the ecological environment. Because it didn't make any sense to me at all. And also the other reason about dissolved oxygen saturation, that was quite severe because the anoxic conditions were low. There's a problem. Not that the lagoon is full, almost needing to be open. So there were 2 reasons in these reports for the lagoon to be open to the sea when it's high, other than it being over 2.5 metres, which is the recommendation now. It used to be open to lower levels in the past. 2 reasons are, one is that if it hasn't been open for a while, it could be open to facilitate native fish migration in from the sea or out to the sea, because several species of native fish do have a marine phase as well as a freshwater phase. And the other reason that it could be opened under not being too high is if the concentration of nutrients builds up too high in the lagoon. There's no indication that that's the case. I don't recall those being mentioned. They may have been. Certainly, those 2 reasons for opening the lagoon don't seem to make sense, and so that's the reason for my question.
Thanks, Councillor. Karen?
Through Madam Chair, so Councillor Rodway is correct that rupia is a keystone species for the lagoon. And previous work has suggested that an abundant biomass for rupia would be between 30 and 60%. However, if you have too much biomass of any plant species, including rupia, it could lead to some adverse ecological outcomes because it would could block light, cause the water to stagnate, make access for fish and other things really difficult. So we do agree with Councillor Ridgway that we could clarify what we mean in point one, which is to say that get the wording correct, which is that rupia and any other native macrophytes exceeds 60% cover and is having an adverse effect on the ecological and cultural health of the lagoon could be a reason to consider opening it. So that would just clarify that the thresholds that we're referring to by being excessive is linked to the previous recommendations that have been developed. In regards to dissolved oxygen, too much or too little oxygen will obviously have an adverse effect on aquatic life, as most organisms rely on a pretty narrow window of ideal oxygen levels. And essentially we're saying if the lagoon ever got to either end of the spectrum, that could represent a threat to ecosystem health. We agree with Councillor Ridgway that it's unlikely that would happen, but it is not impossible, which is why we've included it in its potential criteria to consider an emergency opening of the lagoon. So some examples of situations that might lead to that state could include like a chemical spill, or if you had really excessive temperatures or severe algal blooms as well. So under the right circumstances, we've included that because it may be beneficial to open the lagoon to allow some oxygenated saline water in if it ever got to that point. So I think the key thing to note is that the criteria we included were, they're not independent of each other. And we tried to consider sort of the full spectrum and range of factors that should be considered. And particularly where we've got monitoring data that can be used as triggers. And so that's part of why there's, I guess, extra emphasis on some of those factors that you've identified. Hopefully that clarified.
Thank you.
Satisfied?
Yeah, no, well, thank you. Thank you for that explanation.
Thanks, Councillor, for your question. Chairman Horrell.
Yes, you just add a couple of comments. Morris actually gave a very good synopsis of reasons to open the lagoon. And of course, we've got some groups out there that believe it shouldn't be ever opened again, and you made some very good points. And actually, in the light thing, the area is very important. It's over 2.5, and as Karen's pointed out, if it ever got too thick, that could actually be quite detrimental too. But this passage and a whole lot of other things considerations we need to take into consideration. So thanks for the question, because I think it highlights hopefully that it will take these things into consideration.
Thank you. Report that I referred to, it's a later one too, which I didn't, but 2017, I think it is. Oh, it's referred to in a question, 2021, sorry. It's really interesting reading.
Thanks, councillors. Any councillors' reports for item 8? Chairman Horrell.
Oh, just briefly, there was a number of us attended the field day at John Pemberton's last week, and felt that was very useful. Talking to one of the Ag Research scientists who might be likely to come and talk to us at some stage, but no, it was well done, and it's good of John to open up his farm to people. And it's always good to see positive things going on. So I think those everybody went probably went home and thinking about what they could do at home. So well done, John. I met with Federal farmers. I don't know if you said that the day before. But yeah, useful meetings when you front up to people and have conversations face to face. I've been like Turner, and been a long time since we've been down there. And again, it's we have total agreement with what we're doing. People appreciate it when you front up, and it's one of the I'm finding more and more at the moment that lack of good dialogue and communication with the various people we work with causes us problems if we, and I know we're all busy, but actually having those face-to-face meetings is really important.
So Rodway.
With our carpets a little bit, Phil and Paul and myself recently just completed the decisions course successfully, so that was a lot of hard work.
Indeed.
Hopefully we'll be able to be useful in the future.
Thank you. That's really good to have a few of us now who are able to do that work. So congratulations, you three. Well done. Right, we'll move on to item 9, please. Item 9.1 is the climate change and community resilience update. Anka. Welcome.
Yeah, right. 3 key things in this update regarding the Regional Climate Change Working Group Committee and the Perception Survey. So the first one being about the Regional Climate Change Working Group. In terms of timings of meetings, we had the last workshop of the working group at the 31st of August. There's no further report on that today because the next workshop will be next week. But in the meantime, in terms of the milestone that was reached at the 31st of August workshop was the interagency agreement on the principles and aspirations. They were tabled at the last strategy and policy committee meeting, and now they're formally attached as an appendix in today's briefing for the consideration of SMP. And in terms of the climate change subcommittee, we've got the next one scheduled after this SMP meeting, and there's also a significant milestone being tabled there in terms of the presentation of the organisational greenhouse gas emissions baseline, so we can have probably more detailed discussion on that then. And then the last one in terms of an update of the climate change perception survey. This has been out for a few weeks now. The official close-off date was going to be Monday for this week. But we've decided to hold it over for an additional week, hold it open for an additional week so that, well, essentially early on in that, when it just opened up, we had a lot of busyness associated with the floods. So we think we kind of lost a week in terms of the numbers coming in. So holding it open for an additional week will just help capture the last numbers coming in. So we already do have a robust sample size collected. And so any additional numbers that are coming in, it's just going to increase the statistical strength of that. So that's also quite exciting that there's progress in by that. Thank you for questions and discussion.
Thanks, Anka. Recommendations in front of you, just make sure that you're aware of what those are so that we will get to that point. So we're receiving the climate change update. We're endorsing the provisional principles and aspirations of the Regional Climate Change Working Group. And we would maybe be recommending the incorporation of these principles and aspirations as relevant in the LTP. So just keep that in the back of your mind while we go through. We have Councillor Guyton, then Chairman Horrell, and then Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. The survey that went out, I'm not asking about the results of the survey, but did you get any feedback about the survey itself? Did people say this is just what we wanted, or it's wrong or shame?
I haven't heard anything directly that's come through me. Rachel,
We take the question back to the communications team and see if there is anything.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. I'd be interested to see what the general public thought.
I got 4 invitations to complete that survey. So if everybody else got 4, then we've surely they've answered. Councillor Guyton, is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, finished. Thank you. Chairman Horrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope your 4 responses are all the same.
Not sure about that all 4 because I've already done it twice.
But my question is have the territory provided the nominees for the committee, because at the last period there's still 1 or 2 to be put in place. Is that all happen?
For you, Chair, I suspect you're referring to the Future for Local Government Committee. The working group's been in existence for
Councillor Morrison.
In response to your question, Robert, one anecdotal set of feedback I could receive on the survey was a little bit of anxiety around the question of have you reduced your meat intake as one of the responses. See that as a feature of the survey. That was interesting. I got that from a third party. Just in respect of the aspirations and the principles, I just want to emphasise that these have been really thoroughly worked over by the working group at a staff and a governance level. These will be carried forward and will feature as a core component of the strategy that is currently being developed for the region. And I guess what I would say about these is that the principles kind of define how the 4 local government entities in the region will work together as we continue this work. And the aspirations define the broad trajectory of travel. Direction that we wish to take the work. So I guess what we're not asking for today is people to suggest changes to them. I just want to give people confidence that they have been really, really thoroughly reviewed, panel beaten, revised, amended, edited to get to this point. So we would also, I hope people don't think that is that all we've achieved in the last number of months since we've been working on this, because while this is an important milestone, what else has been achieved is some really sound working relationships, which aren't visible in this work, but I think it's very positive that the TAs are working on this project.
Yes, endorse all of those comments. Councillor McPhail.
Yes. Morrison beat me to it. I did have feedback on the same for obvious reasons. From beef industry. And even myself, the question you're saying was, is it actually a health question rather than health choice rather than emissions choice? Probably the discussion. A lot of this discussion is about affecting certain industries. I think no doubt they will put some plans up. Ask some questions about what we're trying to do. So maybe we were talking to the same person.
Some small community.
I think it was still an appropriate question to ask.
Yeah.
It was, when you look at to be honest, I did the survey after someone texted me, what are you doing, and actually went through the survey, and it's actually got a whole list of other things. And you go, well, yeah, everybody can start driving cars too. How have you made that choice? So, otherwise.
Councillor Evans.
Yes, thank you. The organisational net zero. The question here, by June 2026, each of the councils will measure the organisation greenhouse gas baselines and develop emission reduction. Will all councils agree on or align on the measurement tool that we're going to be using? I believe around about a month ago, we had someone here talking about a tool to measure our environment, south and greenhouse gases emissions, and I didn't believe that the tool would staff's travel to work was included. Other companies doing works for Environment Southland was also included under our emissions. So it'll be quite interesting to know by 2026 whether all councils will be aligned with whatever tools are going to be used to measure that. And is it going to be the same tool that was presented around about 4 weeks ago, which I believe was incorrect?
Excuse me, I'm not sure about the tool that was presented 4 weeks ago, but what I can say is that at a working group level, in terms of our partner agencies, there have been discussions for quite some time now about how we go about measuring our organisational emissions. And at the moment, each of the councils are at slightly different stages of that journey. And so to some extent, Invercargill City Council were the first one that had done a baseline. So to some extent, we've learned a little bit from their process. But the nature of having those discussions across the councils, there is a greater goal of working towards aligning that methodology, because we ideally want to be able to be in a situation where we're going to say, yes, the council figures from one council would be able to be kind of comparable with another council. Yeah, yeah, and so that we don't actually have that at this stage. Each council was on an individual journey, so there's that in terms of that aspiration. June 2026 was considered to be a practical timeframe. It's rolling into the thinking for the next LTP cycle for to make sure that each of the individual councils are on the journey itself, and then the learnings that take place as part of that, and then working towards those discussions, working towards alignment of the methodology.
Thank you. And further to that, it would be good for the climate change committees to be on each council, aligned together. Your thoughts with regards to net zero organisations by 2050. The baseline or the measures on what we're going to be net zero on, is it the three largest industries within Southland, or is it waste control, is it recycling? It's just to be aligned, but not aligned, to be net zero 2050.
Organisationally or the regional?
Organisation.
Organisationally, yes. That at the climate change subcommittee meeting, which is after this meeting, we'll be presenting our Environment Southland organisation baseline, and that's essentially the first step to working through how we're going to how we can reduce those emissions.
Thank you.
Councillor Rodway. Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Gordon first, and then you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Evans' question very interesting about how you assess or weigh up organisations' greenhouse gas emissions. So my question is about our leased land and where we've got farming practices on land that we are looking for at least. Are we factoring in the greenhouse gas emissions from those farms? And if so, are we also including methane emissions from those farms in our own assay?
There's probably, when we work through the organisational boundary of Environment Southland, then there are certain things that are included and certain things that are excluded. And in terms of the lease land, I need to go back.
And I might suggest that some of those questions would be good for the
Detail of
the climate change subcommittee following.
Right.
Yeah. So that staff will.
Well, yes, Madam Chair, that's exactly what I was going to say, and Paul, obviously welcome to this morning. There's a detailed report on your side who's done this work and will answer some of the questions we have. It's all done according to street environment guidelines. So I think it's very robust. But if you can't come to the meeting, then have a look at his report. It's very thorough.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Morrison.
Just to answer that question directly, there is a note in the agenda for the subsequent meeting that emissions from leasehold land owned by council, this has been excluded as council does not have direct operational control over the leasehold land. At this point,
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, so we have those three recommendations in front of us. Somebody like to move them, please? Thank you, Councillor Morrison, seconded Chairman Horrell. Any further questions? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks. Thank you, Anka. That's great work. And Councillor Morrison. Item 9.2 is the National Policy Statement for Greenhouse Gas Emissions from Industrial Process Heat. These are titled. Welcome, Liz. Take it away.
I don't even think this one has an acronym next.
Yeah, I'm sure we can come up with something. Oh, here's an acronym. Right, Councillor. Thank you. Thanks, Liz.
So as described in the paper, we've got an NES and an NPS that have been on our table, and there are elements of that we have to reflect to, and we don't necessarily need to go through to change our plan. We don't need to go through the usual plan change process of outlining the submission process. We just need to put provisions into the plan. At this stage, we recommend that we put in
just policies at this stage. The year plan as it stands in terms of rules will continue. The policies will relate to matters that need to be considered in consent stage. We've got another year to consider what sort of rules we put in place to give effect to the NES. A number of councils around the country are also looking at that. So we're not in a mad rush at this stage to get that done. We've got a year for it to continue. These matters will still be considered through the policies, but that's where we're going. We don't necessarily need a decision at this stage, so the recommendation isn't for a decision because we can make these changes under the new years without that. That's what they at this stage.
So it's just the point is that there's a couple of word changes that have to be made because we've been told we have to. And we're doing it within the rules of being able to do those things. So that's essentially what it is. And you can see in the read amendments. Any questions? Would you like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Roy. Seconded Councillor Morrison. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Carried. It's like that. Thanks, Liz. Item 9.3 is our submission on the introduction of a biodiversity credit system. A reminder to councillors that we had a discussion about this recently, and so this is essentially endorsing that submission. Who's presenting it, please? So we're receiving the draft and approve the content, authorise the final version, which has timing and interesting time. Thanks, team.
Good morning, I'm Chana from the policy team. And thank you for, I have spoken to you during the workshop that was held a while ago on this proposed introduction of the biodiversity credit system. And thank you for providing your feedback during the workshop and via online board reports. That has been very useful and enabled us to draft a submission, which has been attached to the agenda. And as you may have seen, so what was provided was the draft submission, and we would be able to incorporate any further feedback we may have on the content of the submission, and we will also be able to answer any questions you may have. And before we go on to a discussion around a key vote and one organization called Teru Africa, which is a collective of 16 regional and unitary councils. They have been engaging with individual councils to collect the respective views of the councils and form a submission that will be lodged to the ministry in addition to what we are going to be doing through. And just for your information, has been quite an interesting process, and it showed that the councils that were involved in the discussion broadly agreed on the need to have the credit system as well as the main principles that should underpin the system. But there were varied opinions on the detailed designs of the system. So, and that reflects the fact that we are at a very early stage of the policy development process, and there will be, as noted earlier, there will be further opportunities to provide more detailed feedback. And yeah, just to provide more details, the views diverged on specific design issues, including the scope of the system and the overall approach of the system, including whether it should be activities-based or outcomes-based. And there were various pros and cons that were discussed by the councils, and whether the system should include biodiversity offsetting or whether credit should be rewarded for increasing legal protection. So there were a lot of interesting discussions around that.
Thanks, Sean. I think we might be semi-systematic about going through this rather than leaping all over the place. So we might just kind of do a page turn If anybody's got any questions or amendments, we can do it that way. I don't anticipate there being many, but stranger things have happened. So items 1 and 2 of that on that first page, anything from that? It's page 22 in your agenda, anything from page 23? Scope. Anything on page 24?
The question 7 response, I'm just wondering if that was entirely consistent with what our response was to question 2. That was around the need for both positive actions and actions that avoid future decreases, where we, we acknowledge that both types of actions are essential. And then I just wondered if our response to question 7 was a little inconsistent with that, where we was talking about, whether or not biodiversity credits could be awarded for increasing legal protection areas. So that was one that I put the question on, whether that was consistent with our.
Right.
So maybe it's something to look at, but sort of clear the final.
But we will put it back to the so that our answers are consistent with each other.
It might just be a wording change rather than an intent change. Thanks, councillor. 19 on page 25.
Question 8, I'm just wondering if have we clearly indicated our preference on question 8 around whether biodiversity credits should be used for offsetting development impacts? We've discussed in the response that there are pros and cons, but I don't think we've given a clear indication as to our preference as a region council. And certainly my personal opinion should be no. There are other mechanisms that, and I would be sort of hesitant that if someone was pursuing, assuming this is on private land, as we had earlier in response that we have a preference for it to apply to privately owned land, but if someone's doing development, then why would we expect, assuming government co-investment in the system, why would we set taxpayers offsetting or development if it's, I just think that would be inappropriate.
Just to elaborate a bit more on that issue, a huge pull factor for including the biodiversity offsetting within the system that was expressed by others and some of the other councils was that it can be a useful tool for attracting investment into the system, which is one of the main purposes of the system to boost funding for conservation efforts. And because their MPSIB and the future RMA system is likely to create, it's not clear, but there may be a demand for a way to address the need to have biodiversity offsetting, and this system can provide a channel to address that issue. And the pull factor was that it will increase to make the system more popular. And there was quite an interesting discussion as to knowing that there is a risk which you have expressed and explained. How will we manage if you were pursuing that to make to boost funding at the same time reduce. So that was why there was my opinions.
And were we going to make a clear statement as to our preference one or the other, or are we going to leave it as ambiguous in our response here? Given that it asked us to, whether we think yes or no, we haven't really said yes or no.
Not all the answers set from other councils are clear one way or the other. And I think the process is useful to give us a range of concerns for them to consider when they're developing the policy situation going forward. I don't necessarily think we need to be clear. If we have identified pros and cons, let's identify the pros and cons. But if you feel like we need to take a strong stance, then we can do so while identifying that there are.
I guess it was more, I feel we haven't answered or responded completely to the question by not giving an indication in either direction.
I've got a couple of councillors with questions, but I'm just wondering if we need to follow that point up. Okay, thanks. Chairman Horrell then, thanks.
At the moment, for air quality, industrial people in the RMA, you can have offsets, and I think we've got to be careful we don't push them in the direction of this is indigenous biodiversity, so I can find pine trees as an offset when actually maybe we would like to encourage. So I don't think it's just that straight yes or no. You've got to look at other things out there we could get perverse outcomes. So I think probably where we're sitting is where we should be, but interesting to see what everybody else thinks.
Chairman, councillor Rodway, did you along the same lines?
Offsets are a very tricky thing. I think back to the returning our case in the Hawke's Bay where the government was, or the irrigators were going to build a big dam and they're going to swap that land for another bit of land that was a bit dodgy, and the whole thing was not very satisfactory. And I think we do need to be a bit stronger there, as Phil was, I think Phil was suggesting, and say that qualified no, generally no, but there may be special circumstances where it could be justified if there was an overall gain in biodiversity, but obviously it's a big potential to be used like that.
Is that the general feeling?
Yes.
Councillors? Silence, stronger response to that would be our preference. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Fraser. Questions 9, 10, 11. Back over the page, 12, 13, 14. Everything that I can count, 15, 16, 17, 18. Right through to number 23. Anything from those last two pages?
Just on question 21, looking at again in terms of our preference, whether it's A, B or C, seems to me that perhaps B might be the appropriate way to think about this. And an example that springs to mind is if we were encouraging, for instance, native reforestation in certain areas, there are entry costs that are quite prohibitive for someone to pursue that. And while they might at a later date be eligible for carbon credits associated with that, a deterrent or an obstacle that people doing that might be actually we just simply can't fund up with the money to make that initial investment. So, that could be an example where some interaction with the emissions trading scheme, for example, could be considered appropriate in this situation.
Are you thinking more of a scale up rather than running side by side, as one comes in, one comes out, just to help that transition?
Yeah, it would be initial, remove one of those barriers to enable someone to actually consider pursuing that option. Because I say it may be some years before they receive any remuneration from the emissions trading scheme, if it was, especially if it was native forestry, which takes longer to establish.
Chairman Hurrell?
Yeah, I guess most of us agree that the value of biodiversity and encouraging people to either increase it or protect it is a really good idea. Some of the stuff just worries me that it's only bureaucratic and setting up another trading system. I prefer something that was simple. If you do this, you're going to use it. It might mean you can continue your farming operation. You're adding shelter, you're adding biodiversity. The other thing I haven't seen in here is birth control, which is another thing that could actually enhance biodiversity. And not is that covered at all? It's very much about those trading schemes and how we'll develop. Predator control, yeah, because there is good evidence that where predator control is under control, we get enhanced biodiversity, more uptake of carbon dioxide, etc. So it is part of the equation that what we see.
Pest control is the major
Councillor Barton?
Thank you. Just my question is about nuance, and I wonder what we've got here is nuanced enough when it comes with regards to the recreation of lands, forest, the use of exotics initially in establishing those forests, or exotics that are there already, such as Burman Gorse. Is that covered? Or are we just looking through in such a focused way that we can't be flexible enough? Because that's the preferred system. I mean, from my point of view.
Within our council, consider type companies. We have bonds, so we can depending on the current situation, so it's definitely one of the ways we can input that within our submission.
Thank you. So if you look at councillor Guyton's comments there, using exotics to get native forests established has a lot of benefits. It's being used elsewhere because the exotics grow quickly and they smother the grass, provide a shade environment that's suitable for native trees. If you follow that, the harvest of those trees is done carefully in a managed way. The native forest that is growing underneath there can be grown. So it's a really good techniques used, say, internationally, not used much in New Zealand. Everybody goes out and plants these little trees and puts little plastic collar around them and pour stakes and hope that they'll grow in competition with all the grass and birds and everything. So it's a method that hasn't been used much, but I think it's pretty well. The other thing is that a regional input is really to end with if there's anything else we can do that it should be input from regional institutions should be considered. So I think that's important. Hopefully with the new government recognising more input locally, that will be something that would be supported. So
Okay, so I'm wondering if there's an intention to circulate the amended submission for councillors, or would you be happy just to councillors to have staff make those amendments as we've discussed? Yep, great. So the recommendations then are receive the draft and approve the content with those additions and authorise the submission to be lodged. Okay, somebody like to move those, please. Next, Councillor Morrison, seconded Councillor Rodway. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, against, carried. Thanks. Thanks, councillors, for your thoughtful feedback. And item 4, purple loose strife. And she's wearing a suitably coloured purple stripe. I've lived here most of my life and I still do not roll my letter R like that. Thanks, Ellie. Take us away with this amazing piece of information.
Morning everyone, so through you, Manager. I was actually going to take the report as read, if that's okay, and happy to answer any question. I will try my best to answer any questions you have. Anything really technical, I might have to talk back to the team, but I'll try my best to answer your questions.
I think it's pretty straightforward actually, but Councillor Guyton, thanks.
I'm really interested in stripe. Can you give me an example of where the plant has got out of control and has adversely affected the environment itself?
So, as we know, so in Southland, we're actually trying to get rid of it. So our sites are really quite small, and they're not causing too many problems. But there are sites elsewhere in the country where it's gone into major wetlands, significant wetlands, and things like that. But we do have one site, I believe, on the Waiho which is beginning to spread. If I can just ask Rachel, in that case, so Rachel is the prosecutor officer who actually deals with our Purple Loose Stripe program. So Rachel, are you able to say if there are any sites in Southland where it's actually causing an environmental issue that's escaped?
We're looking at a site at the moment where, as we found last year, there was a purple loose strife plant or two in the floodplain, just in Invercargill actually, and so we are pursuing as to how that got there. So we're looking at drainage plans, working with ICC, looking at what surveillance we need to do to find out where that has come from. So obviously it's in that kind of habitat where it could thrive. There's There's another site just near the Clifton Bridge at Tuatapere as well, which is where purple loosestrife has been growing traditionally in a garden there around ponds for some time now. And that's been sort of spreading out as the neighbouring properties. And there's a nursery as well, whereas there was quite large areas of purple loosestrife as well. So, so there's a variety of examples that I've actually seen, but talking and having gone to NETS conferences and that type of thing, talking to other biosecurity officers who are dealing with this plant all the time, whether it's in the North Island or part of the South Island, they do sort of say it's really one that's worth eradicating and to try and keep as contained as possible. So that's why we've had it as a focus moving forward.
Councillor Roy and then Chairman Horrell.
Yeah, 2 questions. I mean, I've never heard of this, and it probably reflects a little bit on my awareness, but I'm sure I represent the greater population of our Rohit really, and so my question is, you know, how are we sort of advertising the need to be aware of it, and what is the reporting system for where it's found? That's the first question. And the second question is, I note that Environment South and staff are controlling by what means. You dig it out, spray it, spot spray it, drills, whatever. How does that go?
So for the first question, we have been doing a lot of publicity over the last couple of years on purple loosestrife. So this is one of our eradication species in the RPMP. So it is in the past plan. It gets reported onto every quarter with sites and things, and it's on the past up and things like that. The team have been going out to gardening groups. We go to all of the garden centres. We have got a little network of, if we find out people have been passing plants around, we follow the trail anywhere we think it's gone, and we try and get out to as many groups as possible. And we've actually been running a campaign where if you tell us that you've got something you think may be purple loosestrife, and you put it in, then you can get a voucher back from garden, and that's been working really well and identified lots of new sites. And the team also drive around and do lots and lots of surveys trying to find areas where it may put out. So over the last couple of years, we have identified a lot of new sites that way because of the increased effort. We've currently got 30 known sites, 60 sites. 30 of them are active and 30 of them are historic. So 30 we think we've eradicated, 30 we're still looking at and actively trying to control. Control methods depend a little bit on where it is. It can be spraying, it can be digging out the rhizomes, it can be removing all of the seeds and everything like that, and then we go back and check on a regular basis that that's
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Yes, I can endorse the engagement that you've had, and for councillors, a reminder that Anteno, the app, is a really good opportunity to report anything that you're not sure of, having done it several times, because purple loosestrife looks like another okay garden plant, so you just do need to check actually. Chairman Horrell, thanks.
Yes, a couple of questions. I've never seen this plant or haven't recognised it, and I'm wondering whether it's in relation to the what the Australians call Patterson curse. But the other thing is, I'm assuming with wire control that normally you have to have a good implementation for the fire control agent to work. And I'm assuming from what you're saying, we probably haven't got that myself.
So the intent of the submission is to help our colleagues further up the country deal with it in areas where they do have lots of it, so that it doesn't really spread here. So we are on track to eradicate within our RPMP, which is by 2029, we should have eradicated or at least put it down to zero density in Southland. The intent of this is to help our colleagues up country deal with it there, so we then don't get more and more infestations and we don't have to keep dealing with it on an ongoing basis. So biocontrol won't work in Southland. If we don't have enough down here, it's not appropriate for Southland, but if we can help the rest of the country, then it will help us more.
Thanks for making that clear. Any other questions?
I just got a question. You know, we need to be cautious. Once again, introducing new species into the country. Another effort on busy trying to eradicate introduced species and that have been brought into the country that we all thought was okay at the time. Now we are finding that it wasn't okay at the time, and guess the question we'd be asking is the in-containment testing been satisfactory, that everyone's comfortable that should there be a release of this, I guess as a proper testing and such like being done and considered prior to once again bringing another introduced species into the country. I would suggest maybe not, and if we can control themselves without this introduced species, why can not be done elsewhere? But I guess I'll just say I'm reluctant to support the action at this time.
So all of the testing is done by Manaki Whenua, and they do quite a lot of testing. So there's we're talking about 4 different insects here, so 4 different things. They have them in controlled circumstances. They introduce them to lots of different native plants, lots of different things, and they starve them and try and make them eat something else. These species, they haven't found anything else that they'll eat. They'll only eat this particular family of plants. 2 of the 4 will only eat this one species of that family of plants, and then the other 2, the leaf beetles, will eat a couple of other cultivars if they are pushed and if they are hungry enough, but only if they're growing in big clumps. So from what we know of the Manaki Whenua testing process for biocontrol plants, we are comfortable that the testing has been done and this doesn't cause a risk to using them from the information that we currently have. And I take your point on it's not here in Southland. So why? And I think we just don't have much of it. It's much easier for us to contain it and control it and eradicate it. Whereas because in areas, particularly North Island and Canterbury, it's already got out of control, the techniques we're using just won't work at those scales. Yeah.
Would you like to move those recommendations or?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. Seconded, Councillor Evans. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thanks, team. Okay. 9.5 is the Environment Southland submission on the proposed Gore District Plan. It's a pleasure to welcome Marcus to our S&P for the first time. Welcome to the happy family that is Environment Southland, Marcus.
Thanks very much. This report seeks approval from council to the submission on the Gore District Plan review process. So the first Gore District Plan was operative in 2006, and the RMA requires them to be updated for a full review every 10 years. So certainly commend the Gore District Council on going through the review process with a number of changes to the legislation and some pieces going on at the moment. So effectively, at the time of writing the report, the submissions were closing on the 26th of October, but it has been extended to now the 27th of November. So I just want to note that, but there isn't another committee meeting prior to the submissions closing, so still seeking to progress forward this report. So effectively, the reason seeking to put a submission in is purely just to make sure that the Southland Regional Policy Statement requirements are being met in the new district plan, and ensuring that if there are other submissions seeking a different perspective or a different decision from council where Environment Southland still have the opportunity to join appeals or will be part of a mediation process should they see fit. It's certainly not signing Environment Southland up for any appeal process, but it's purely just making sure that if we submit on it, then we can understand that if something changes through the process, Environment Southland will have that opportunity. So the high level themes that we've identified so far and the Gore District Plan relate to natural hazard management, around floodplain management, and taking a precautionary approach around enabling new development to occur in areas that has a higher or immediate risk of natural hazard, inundation, and that sort of thing. Also understanding climate change, floods and droughts, floods and droughts. And make sure that those considerations are built into the process. Indigenous biodiversity. So with the new National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity that they came out from Wellington about 1 week before the district plan was notified. So there is some Indigenous biodiversity considerations in the proposed district plan, but it seemed like it was a reasonably quick process of slotting something in there. And the other theme that has sort of cropped up since writing the report is forestry around management of exotic forestry plantations in the Gore District Council. So those are the initial high-level topics that staff are looking to work a submission up, and we're working through that at the moment. We haven't got a full submission in full detail for councillors today to look through. So in terms of the resolutions seeking this report, that seeking approval for a high-level submission from Environment Southland and delegation to the Chief Executive and the General Manager of Policy and Government to approve the final Environment Southland submission prior to lodgement.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, just councillors, just to reinforce that that's a high level action at this point.
Yep, just to add to the presentation of the report there, if you there was a view from council that you did want to see more detail prior to the submission. Now that it's been extended, we could bring something back to council on the 8th of November if that would, if you'd like to see the detail. There's still be more work to come between those. Now that we've had an extension, might be an opportunity for us to present an early draft, and that was.
I think that would be my preference. I'm not sure about the councils. Can we cover off that question first, please? So is that related to that question?
Yes, I would definitely be keen. Obviously the extension was asked by Federated Farmers. There was quite a bit of discussion going on up around the Gore District, so consultation, and so it's been good that they've extended a month. But I'd certainly there's a lot going on up there. See what the person over at high level as it is, to see where we stand some of the stuff.
Yeah, so just a general willingness to have a closer look at that submission before, now that we have time. Yes, it's on the 8th of November. Thanks, team. Chairman Hall.
Yes, certainly support. I guess we're supposed to be working towards one-stop regional plan with district plans that line up. So, well, obviously the first cab off the rank, we've had a few new in the last month. So I think it is worthwhile making sure there's no red flags that can be dealt with. There's obviously we want ICC and SDC's district plans. They're going to have to give effect to our RPS, which is also under review, just probably at this stage more or less to comply with the national legislation. But at the end of the day, we want consistency across the province as much as possible, because it makes it easier for people.
Thanks, Chairman. I'll just, did you have a response?
Just very quickly, yeah, just to the recommendations that are still within this paper are still valid, because even if you'd like us to bring a more detailed version back to council, we can obviously have different recommendations there, and I wouldn't want to presuppose what they might be, but there still needs to be a sign off by either the chief executive or myself in order to.
You read my mind.
That's good.
You read my mind,
Good,
because that's exactly what I was going to ask about recommendation 3, whether we needed to do that now or whether we should do that on the 8th of November.
We can probably do it twice, but if you give direction from this committee for us to carry on that basis, what we will be able to present to you in 3 weeks' time will be slightly more advanced, but it still won't be finished in my sense.
Right.
Given that we'll have 3 weeks following that date to finalise.
Yeah, sure. Okay. We understand that then. So those 3 recommendations in the paper still stand. Thank you, Councillor McPhail. Seconded, Councillor Gibson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. Thanks, Marcus. Item 9.6 is the Southland Regional Coastal Plan Review update. Thanks, Nick. There's 2 recommendations there, folks. Just make sure you read what they are.
Sorry, Chair.
No worries.
So yeah, just an overview essentially of a background which might be helpful for a workshop that's coming up on the council workshop. So
in that workshop, what we're hoping to do is cover in a bit more detail around some of these elements and thinking about where to from here. And there may be a bit of discussion about background to understand the context. So that's planned for the 9th of November, which is one of the recommendations. Otherwise, it will be helpful having that background so councillors can see and access that information. I'll provide some links that are embedded within the report as well. Essentially, overview is that goes back a wee way. The strategic, started with the strategic direction, and then we moved into efficiency and effectiveness review of the regional coastal plan. And the next step after that was to do sort of technical support type of information and studies. And then there's development of 14 discussion papers, which collates the key topics. And just note that there's an appendix there in the report that lists what those discussion papers are. And also, as laid out in the report, there are some topics which are a bit more complex and are likely to be quite contentious, as you could imagine. And there's also been some changes in case law and things that have happened since then, such as Ananui has obviously gone through process it's been through in the meantime. But there's also been some other case law in other parts of the country which is relevant too, so we need to incorporate those elements into the next steps. Sorry, just to add as well, Chair, that obviously PP5, which is a plan change 5, which is the surface water activities Fiordland aspect we've been looking into. So first off, thank you very much, Chair, for your contributions to the hearing panel, as well as Councillor Cook. So thank you very much. That's a lot of effort, so thank you. And that is, we now have a hearing recommendation report. That's a recommendation to the council for that from the council. They've only had 8, I believe, full council meeting, so we should have access to that information as well, which is obviously relevant to what we're talking about here.
Very.
Yeah.
Questions, anybody? Councillor Rodway.
Policy statement here in 10, that's been around for a long time now. Is that being stage? I guess it was
Yes, it'll be basically incorporated into the national planning framework, which is that package of national direction that's going to be relevant to the spatial planning and reports. I don't believe that there's a noise about changes. That's fine.
So through the chair, just to add, so the work that's underway for the national planning framework is the smushing together of all existing national direction, and the NZCPS is one of those pieces. The work that's been done on the first version of that so far has been primarily focused on eradicating any duplication or differences between those pieces of national direction. So the extent to which we'll see changes to the NZCPS will be to ensure that there's alignment between it and the other pieces of national direction. So no fundamental changes are expected at this point. But given the weekend's activities, we'll see. So yeah, we're kind of in a bit of a holding position at the moment until the new government forms with where to next with the national planning framework.
Councillors, anything else? Thank you, Councillor Rodway. Seconded, Councillor Evans. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks. Item 7, we indeed do have time. How fantastic. Thanks, Given. Science update.
Oh, no, that's not me.
It's not you, that's Brennan. Sorry, Given. Getting your steps up. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brendan Meir. I'm a soil and land scientist for Environment Southland. Most of the presentation today about soil quality and monitoring.
Let's see up. Back.
Okay, so.
That the objective of the program is to access and track changes in soil health, to identify potential soil degradation and contamination, to inform land management practices, and to support sustainable agriculture and environmental conservation efforts. These are the site locations. So we had 55 site locations around Southland to sample. 23 of them were dairy, which makes up 42%, 38% in 21 sites. Extensive dry stock 8 sites at 14%, and we had one of each of native beech forest, native tussock, and exotic pine. This is just as a control. There's 2 sampling periods, so between 2010 and 2015 we take one set of samples, and between 2020 and 2022 we took another set of samples. These samples for 7 different soil quality indicators. That's total carbon, total nitrogen, mineralizable nitrogen, pH, Olsen P, bulk density, and microporosity. So in these results, we took out 2 of them, which showed the biggest difference. And the first one was mineralizable nitrogen. In dairy, it increased quite substantially, whereas dry stock reduced a little bit in 2 different types. Microporosity throughout Southland has been decreasing. This makes the soil more compact, increases runoff and erosion. And this compared to the different land use types compared to our controls of native forest and native tussock. There's quite a bit of difference because of the porosity increased in these areas. So the key messages is an increase in soil compaction throughout Southland, an increase in mineralizable nitrogen. I have a technical report increase to come out in the future, and this work will inform the management practices to influence environmental outcomes and productivity over time. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Guyton.
About macro porosity, why does that create damage to soil? I mean, it's quite striking the difference between a native forest. I noticed that you use beech, but I'm wondering why you use a mixed brick out. But anyway, it's not. But also, it seems like a big deal if the facts show that damages the soil with regard to macro porosity. Why does it cause harm? I mean, what is the result of porosity?
The result is that water can't infiltrate the soil, so it just run off the top, which leads to erosion and the loss of other nutrients.
Councillor Morrison and then Chairman Horrell.
I was just curious as to, is there a relationship between the two? So as you lose macro porosity, does that increase the
yes.
Chairman Horrell and then Councillor McPhail and Councillor Rodway and Councillor Gibson.
Yes, on the porosity. I was really surprised that the native forest had gone up. I would have thought it would be, if it was there all the time, why would it increase? If it was new forest, I could understand it. It just seemed to be a bit of an aberration.
In the native environment, we have a lot more carbon and things like that. So you have a lot of leaves and things which break down and they increase the bacteria in the soil, which actually increases that.
So the sample taken of the forest has been there for a long time, or is it a developing forest?
So sorry, I wasn't actually.
And it is worth pointing out there's only one set of samples taking in and forestry as well, so when people that water starters are putting too much in the basis.
Something that we need to consider on previous reports in England where they've found that they're having higher floods now, with the same rainfall, and one of the things that we're doing in the ground is after runoff
Councillor McFarlane, then Councillor Rodney.
Yeah, well, one question in regards to the sampling, obviously, Mr. always asks, so do they go back to the same pattern? GPS line, the GPS line, just to clarify that. So it is, obviously, we need to have that accuracy. But, obviously the protection thing, like, sort of, certain, cattle on that. See it at home. So it's quite phenomenal. Cattle, protection side of things, especially in a week like the rise, winter, it's really stand out. But it is an issue in Southland.
Thanks, Councillor Rodway. Oh, sorry, Karen.
So I just gonna Chair, just to reply. So I think it is worth acknowledging that the soils monitoring program has suffered from I guess it's gone in fits and starts. And so the approach has slightly changed over time as well, which does make interpretation of the results a little bit more challenging because the selection of sites hasn't always been consistent. So there are some sites that have been monitored regularly through time, as you've just said, but there are some sites, and in any given year, the number of sites is varied, which is why Brennan's grouped the sites into those two time periods in order to do the analysis, just to make it a little bit more robust.
Just to clarify that these numbers here are from sites that were they're on exactly the same sites and within the dairy. I'm just looking at dairy so that we know that hey, that's it's a 10-year change. We can accurately the accuracy of the data that's on the challenge. Make sure it's I've seen it. Years. Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Rodway.
Well, thank you. So I do have some worries about the usefulness of this data. You mentioned that, and you know, for the native forest, tussock and exotic forest, running up one sample. And so, it's a big sample variability. In any of those sites, you would need to have, maybe 20 samples, something like that, to really get a better picture of what's like. And obviously that costs a lot. You mentioned the big problems with that. So, yeah, I do sort of have a few concerns along those lines. And the other thing, can you explain to us what mineralizable nitrogen is compared to, say, urea or nitrogen in the air?
That's the three, Madam Chair. Yep, I totally understand. There have been some issues with the monitoring program. That is why Brennan's reviewing the data and then sort of coming up with the purpose of the review of that data is in order to come up with a more robust program going forward. So that's why we're doing that work and sharing, some of these results with you. But I'll leave you ask that.
The mineralizable nitrogen is plant available nitrogen, so it's broken down through ammonium into nitrates, and so it's actually plant available. So it's everything like that's available to the plant.
It's mineralized. My understanding is that it's Eventually, there's margin that's in there, such as roots or breaking down vegetable, also things. So over time, if it's broken down by microorganisms, so in the forest, for example, mineralizable nitrogen is really high. Both samples are relatively high, and the last one is higher than anything else. But it's obviously not a problem here because it's not something that's been applied hard on. Once again, it seems to me that, you know, the wrong method could be taken out of the statement. Well, you're looking at it, you're going to revise it, improve it, so that's all good.
Councillor Gibson, then Councillor Evans.
Just to extend from Farmer McPhail, are you doing these tests at the same time of the year, same place, same lab analysing them? Because other than that, you might as well forget it. And can you guarantee that that has been done in the past?
I wasn't actually a part of the sampling at those points, so I'm not actually sure of.
Understand that, but if you can't determine that, what you presented today doesn't make terribly much sense to me.
They are, as far as I understand, they are sampled at the same locations and they're sampled at the same lab. So
at the same time of the year.
At the same time of the year, there was a couple of ones which were at different times of the year, but in the future, I'm putting together a program. I'm putting together a program which will be the same time. It's part of my review.
Thank you, Councillor Evans, and then Councillor McPhail finally.
Thank you. Just further on to that, it's an interesting subject. What the guys are bringing up here is very relevant. But was there any individual changes of land use on any of the sites? Was there, you know, there's a whole raft of measurements that we could look at. Was there increases in stock numbers on sites? Was there changes or differences in farming practices on sites? Was there any anomalies that we saw? Because it was quite a broad, it was around about a 15-year period there from baseline to now. Was there any sites that changed the other way, just that you could determine from change of farming practices, change of stock numbers, change of anything like that? You know, deep dive into it will be quite interesting because there's a hell of a lot of measures that can be included instead of just same side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're right, Brian. Didn't look into the data that much. This is just a preliminary report because the big reports coming. So we have to do this. Very good. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Just in regards to what the roadway was indicating about the available in, and I mean the available in could be like even just plant species over and developing their pasture species may have a major effect. I'm just saying we don't actually, that'd be the next step saying why have we got those. That's what we really need to go and saying it's not just about pumping in or because maybe in the pasture it's generally a lot of available in coming from just the clovers actually, which actually doesn't mean there's been air going on potassic super. There's other things that really help that along too. So it's the next thing to say why. It'd be great to see if we can go down that road too, just to clarify some of these questions.
Thank you, Chairman Horrell, and then Councillor Pemberton.
Well, I'm happy to move the recommendation, and there are more questions than answers, but I'm really pleased we're doing some work in this field and so we do need to get a bit more
Councillor Pemberton, quick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the table of Osland P, it's got recommendations and it's not cropping and horticulture there. Are we going to have cropping and horticulture put into this scenario? That Southland's talking about land use changing when it's getting, when we look at the recommendations for it, does raise some concern when they're talking being 50 to 100 Osland P. That's the race.
Madam Chair, yep, that is the intent of reviewing the program and actually looking at kind of, current land uses and make up of that and the land use might go, so we're well positioned to understand the future, yeah.
Thanks. So we've had a mover for the recommendation to receive the report. Seconded, thanks, councillor Evans. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks very much. I look forward to the budgetary considerations for that new program. Item 8, water and land portfolio update. Welcome back, Liz.
Yeah, this is just a quick update as to what our team have been doing in water and land space since the last meeting. Much of what we've been aware of. We've had the night management decision since we last met the next meeting, which includes a number of issues for us. So Appendix N, for example, is now pretty much, we've got a product that we can use. And also we had some decisions on mapping, useful. However, there's still a couple of matters. One's going to High Court this month, seeing how that process goes. And there's another High Court issue that is yet to be secured today. And there's another water quantity issues that are still with Environment Court, but we are progressing forward and into the implementation phases we talked about previously, just making sure that our team is upskilled. We know what the implications of the appeal results are. You're aware of what's happened, and also that we can now start communicating out to the public and making sure that they're aware. So things like the fact sheets that are on the website, the old ones are now gone, and we'll be updating them on that space. So there's a lot of work to be done. We'll be making sure that the plan before it's made up to a stringency test against their national policy statements, the national environmental standard that have come at us in the last wee while since we notified the plan, and see whether there needs to be any updates to it before we go operative. So that will be brought through here. Yes, and then we are working on the change to that plan, which is plan change. As you'll be aware, there was a stakeholder briefing on the 3rd of October, which was seems to be well received. There was good attendance, and that was just a briefing as to where we're at and where we're going. Following up from that, we've circulated council's position at the moment on allocations to those stakeholders and given them the opportunity to feedback to us on some of the questions, just to make sure that the principles of equity that we've talked about and allocations is welcomed by the community. So it looks like it's in the start of November, but there will be a workshop with stakeholders that are interested in talking with us and giving us their views, have that chance. There will be an online document for that feedback and the next day.
Councillor Pemberton.
Do you think with the update and engaging with the community, do you think we've made it a very clear message that I guess what's happened the weekend, people think the flood's going to come off people on the freshwater farm plans? Do you think there's a clear understanding that Appendix M is still going to be there? It's still going to need certifiers and all that stuff. I get the feeling people think that the whole country is just back off moving on this.
Yeah, I can't talk for the community. However,
more around our clarity and our messaging.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's been a lot of focus up till now on the regulations, and Appendix N is only really relatively new in terms of the decision. So be messaging out there that actually while the regulations maybe we don't know what's going to happen with that space. We've still got the regional approach, and the southern approach still stands at the moment, and it may get changed to a plan change to a tiny, but it's there, and will require some work.
Question.
So I think we as council have to just keep going until the thing changes. Because it's a legislation that sits. That don't go too fast.
Stephen Horrell.
Well, I think it's very important, especially with a bit of uncertainty about that as well. The the government certified plan that we've only got one plan, so we need to focus on our own plan. So it is reasonably simple, people can revise and use. The dust will settle over the next few months on exactly what happens, but you know, there's talk out there that the farm plans are a waste of time. The problem's actually us, and what we want them to be a product that is valued by the users and actually will bring the environmental benefits that we hope that will. So I think we're going to have some conversations on this over the next month or two when we'll see what's coming out of Wellington. That our own plan is finally emerged from the environment court, and the plan looks a little there's going to be some conversations to be held on.
Really clear, just quickly to add to Liz's response there on the farm plan element and the appendix N into play, and to Councillor Clinton's point, one of the things that the team are focused on at the moment is how we make sure, to Chairman Coral's point around one plan, so the matching up of what appendix N requires is a primary task that the team are working on at the moment, and how we can communicate that effectively soon is also a primary concern. So we've got a couple of sessions scheduled with yourselves to talk in a bit more detail about some of that, and the opportunities that exist forwards into the plan change obviously need to be considered as well. So we're just, yeah, we're working through it, but we want to have a conversation with you pretty urgently.
Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, I think in regards to there's obviously so many things that are the clashing with the regulation and our plan and EPSs and things, so the sooner we can get that sorted out. So it's not two sort of things people have to look at. That's obviously maybe hopefully the government might look at that with it differently. So I'm not saying the rules are going to go away, it's just actually getting them aligned. It's going to make it a bit more clear. And certainly I was just looking at implementation. We certainly need to have a sound understanding of rural land and its implications around the table here at the start. There's a bit of unknown there. Just in regards to the stakeholder meetings, is there any chance, you know, from a council perspective, from a government, that we listen in or be involved? You know, just I'm not saying we're implementing, it's actually just part of the community understanding. I know you're listening, but we want to hear what's going on. So not pushing, but I'm just asking.
So through you, Chair, the initial stakeholder session on the 3rd was a briefing, so it was more information out. We do have a recording of that we're very happy to share with council, but it was signalled at that briefing that the next step following on from the feedback on the allocation paper was for those stakeholders to come and meet with yourselves and the governance of Te Marama to present their thoughts on that. So that is the intention going forward, that the stakeholders will interact directly with governments as well.
Any other questions? Somebody like to remove the report? Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, second Councillor Rodway. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks. And the group program update is item 9.9.
Usually when there's a government election, things go a bit quiet, but unfortunately for instance, this time around, there were quite a few pieces of national legislation out for consultation over that period, so we didn't get that well. And also in that time, we've had a new NES developed for the what now was the NES for Foundation Pro 3 is now the NES Pro 3. It's the new acronym, that's the NES CF, NES PF. So this one we've talked about it before in meetings. There was another piece of consultation leading up to now on it. And it also builds on what ended up in so the changes, so one of the changes is councils now have way more power in terms of where community products can go. The issues identified and addressed through wilding, tree risks and slash management, And also the board related the carbon forestry into this information guidance. However, for wasn't necessarily, it was being as clear was probably before the conversations on carbon forestry group to real impact. So now that's changed. So it is relatively new, came through last week, the 3rd of October. So it's worked on the implications for us. And as Mark's alluded to earlier, we can look at the report and just make sure. Next space.
Thanks. Questions, councillors? Chairman Horrell?
Well, at the time of the conclusion there, this thing finally came through, which was for a long time, got to regional control rather than it's all there and including carbon forestry, which makes it wasn't really up from the start. So I haven't seen all the details, but obviously I think was supposed to report back so it's good news that we've given a little bit more to be able to make solutions for self conditions, so that's good. We've started for 3 years and finally popped out of there.
Anything else, councillors? Something like to remove the recommendation, please. Receiving the report. Thank you, Chairman Horrell, seconded Councillor Morrison. All those in favour, please say aye. Against. Carried. Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of the public session, and there are no extraordinary items and there is no public excluded business. So I will draw the meeting to a close with a new closing. Bear with me. Kia whakaaria te tapu, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia wātea